2020 has been a roller coaster of a year. First and foremost, in our real lives, obviously, but in a much less serious environment, also as Halo fans. We went from complete excitement as we played the Master Chief Collection on PC while waiting for the release of Infinite, to months of content drought at a time as we waited for some more news and information. With all this, there have been some very influential moments for Halo in 2020, so in this video we are going to go over the top 10 Halo moments of 2020, both good and bad, kind of compiled into one list based on how impactful they are for Halo as a whole. Obviously, these are just my opinions, so let me know in the comments if you feel I snubbed an impactful event or placed something differently than you would have. With that out of the way, let's get started. At number 10, we have Master Chief being added to Fortnite. Now I know you're seeing this and you're probably thinking, why on earth is he including this? But personally, I believe that Master Chief being added to Fortnite is actually a pretty big deal. Not only do we get to see more cool Halo crossovers with other games, we also in this case get it with arguably the biggest game on the market currently. A lot of fans of Fortnite were probably introduced to Halo for the first time with the Master Chief being added into Fortnite, so this could end up being pretty big for Halo if Infinite ends up actually being good, as now those players and those fans of Fortnite are already exposed to Halo, so if they start hearing their friends talk about Halo Infinite, or hell, maybe they even hear their friends talking about Halo MCC on PC, maybe they'll be more likely to check the game out. And hey, like I said, even if none of those players really end up being converted to Halo players, it's just cool to be able to play Halo characters in other games. I know personally that the Master Chief being added to Fortnite is the first time that I've played Fortnite in years, and honestly I didn't have that bad a time. It reminded me a lot of when the Halo Reach Spartans like Emil and Kat, etc. got added into Gears 5. Those were my favorite characters to use in Gears 5, and honestly, one of the few reasons I played the multiplayer for as much as I did, because it was just cool to use characters that I enjoyed and that I was familiar with. Next up at number 9, we have the end of year Infinite update. Now I have this one pretty low on the list, mostly because the end of year update didn't really provide any super important information or anything super new that really was groundbreaking for us as Halo fans. We got some cool screenshots and renders of the Spartan armors that we hadn't seen before, saw a couple of the different armor coatings, and we also got to see our first screenshot of a multiplayer map. All of this was really cool, and they also just touched on various different aspects of development and different aspects of the game, so it was definitely a nice update, and it was something that we had been asking for months, so I was really happy that we got this update toward the end of the year. But like I said, there wasn't really anything groundbreaking in the update, which is why I have it so low on the list. Moving on to number 8, we have the release of the Halo Shadows of Reach book. This was released back in October and was written by Troy Denning. Personally, I haven't read a Halo book since probably the Fall of Reach when I was back in high school, so it's been a hot minute before I have dove into the Halo lore in terms of books, but it's cool to see new books are still being released, and this one had pretty good reception from what I can gather amongst critics. And hey, anything that can get more lore to people who are big lore heads is a huge plus in my books. I don't know if lore heads is a term, but if not, you know, we just made it one, I guess. Next up at number 7, I kind of lumped two things together here, and that's Joseph Staten joins 343 and Chris Lee leaves 343. So back in August, we saw Joseph Staten join 343 to help head up the Halo Infinite project. He has been a long-time Halo veteran, and this was him returning to Halo as a whole. This was pretty big because a lot of people think he did a really good job on some of the original Halo titles, and his experience and expertise in games and in Halo in particular should help Halo Infinite become a better product. I've also lumped this one together with Chris Lee leaving 343, which we got the news of back in October. Chris Lee oversaw the production of Halo Infinite at 343, and as of that news update back in October, he no longer works on the Halo Infinite project. This is pretty big news because it wasn't the first time a lead developer for Halo Infinite has left 343. And while we definitely don't know all of the information, and honestly, who knows if we ever will as fans, this could be a hint at some of the development issues that Halo Infinite has been experiencing. Alternatively, this also could have been a result of the poor showing that Halo Infinite had during its gameplay reveal months prior to Chris Lee leaving. I think both of these are pretty impactful, which is why I have them at number 7. Obviously, Joseph Staten brings a lot of experience, and hopefully he's going to really help shape up the Halo Infinite project as it kind of heads toward the finish line over the next year. And likewise, Chris Lee leaving just means another head developer left 343, so that's definitely something that's pretty impactful to Halo. Next up at number 6, we have another one that kind of I lumped together, and that's Frosty returns to Halo, along with some of the bigger esports organizations picking up teams for Halo Infinite. Specifically, I'm talking about Envy, who picked up a team, Cloud9, who picked up a team, and then Sentinels, who already had a team but kind of re-upped as Frosty rejoined Halo. While we basically know nothing in terms of what Halo Infinite's esports scene is going to look like, at the very least, I think this shows there is some level of expectation that Halo Infinite could be a healthy esport if these teams are jumping in early and picking up players and picking up teams. Alternatively, it could just also be them wanting to pick up teams at a bottom dollar before all the other organizations hop back in and it becomes like a mini bidding war. But regardless, I think it was cool to see these esports orgs return back to Halo. Also, I think Frosty returning to Halo is the bigger portion of this event, because this is the first time that we've seen a esport competitor, a top competitor, return back to Halo from another major esport, being Call of Duty. Frosty, toward the end of Halo 5, if you don't know, he left to go compete in the CDL, which is the Call of Duty League. And this was huge because it was one of many, many top Halo competitors that left for Call of Duty or left for other games, as usually those games provide a much more stable income and stable environment for those players to compete in. So seeing Frosty actually leave Call of Duty, where he was a pretty solid competitive player, and return back to Halo at least shows some promise. Maybe it's just because we all know he loves Halo, or it could be that he also thinks there is a chance that Halo Infinite is going to be a decent esport. Now, don't get me wrong, there's always players hopping in between these different titles, but having a top player like Frosty, who arguably you could say was one of the best, if not the best, Halo 5 player, go to Call of Duty and then come back to Halo, in my opinion, is a pretty influential event for Halo. Because normally it's just people going the other way. They never come back to Halo after seeing success in other esports. Moving on to number 5, we have Halo 2's unbelievably broken release on PC. Back in May, 343 released Halo 2 and Halo 2 Anniversary to PC, and the release for these games was an absolute clusterfuck. I don't know if you guys remember or if you played during the launch week or so, but the bugs for the game were ridiculous. On the PC front, Halo 2 Classic specifically was so broken you could shoot at the floor and kill people, you just randomly die, it was terrible. And then on the console side, the same patch managed to break Halo 3 in a lot of pretty hilarious ways, where vehicles were driving on their own and all sorts of crazy things. These major bugs did end up getting addressed pretty quickly. I think it took about a week or two, but it was a pretty big event to see a release of one of the MCC PC titles be so absolutely broken, because the whole premise to the MCC on PC was that they were going to come out when they were ready, and clearly Halo 2 was not ready. Next up at number 4, we have Halo 4 releasing to PC along with crossplay. Now, Halo 4 releasing to PC, while that's cool for Halo 4 fans, it's definitely one of the lesser populated and lesser enjoyed games in the franchise, and we won't really get into that in this video. But along with Halo 4 came the long anticipated feature, which is crossplay, which now allows PC players to play with Xbox players on any of the MCC titles, which is absolutely huge for the Master Chief Collection, as now all of those players are just one big player base, where before we were separated off into our different areas of choice. Crossplay has been really nice for queue times, especially in some of those lesser populated playlists, and it's just really nice to be able to play with friends that might be on Xbox if you're on PC, or vice versa. Next up, at number 3, we have Halo 3 releasing on PC. Halo 3 was released back in July, and this is absolutely huge just because Halo 3 is probably the most loved and the most popular game in Halo history, and you could argue that in different ways if you want, but having Halo 3 finally come to PC after 13 years is just awesome for all these Halo fans that have been waiting for it since it released back on the Xbox 360. The release for Halo 3 on PC was also just pretty smooth. Halo 3's release to PC finally allowed players who never actually played the Halo games on console to finish the fight, as back in the day, we did get Halo CE and Halo 2 on PC, but we never got the final edition to the trilogy on PC. So this was just absolutely huge, not only for people who never got to play it on Xbox, but for lots of fans like myself that loved Halo 3 back in the day on Xbox, but now just play games on PC. Not only that, Halo 3 being added to PC has allowed a lot of players who have heard great things about Halo 3 to be able to jump in and check it out themselves. And whether or not they've stuck around or not, it's just cool that Halo 3 is finally on PC. Next up, at number 2, we have the Halo Infinite gameplay reveal. Also back in July, just a few weeks after Halo 3 was added to PC, Halo was really kicking up into storm as we got the gameplay reveal for Halo Infinite, which was a playthrough of a little section of a campaign level where we got to see Master Chief actually jump into action for the first time, as all of the previous Halo Infinite trailers and everything were just cinematic trailers. Now, unfortunately, the gameplay reveal did not live up to people's expectations, and there were a lot of criticisms thrown at it, but regardless, it was definitely a huge event for Halo during the year where we finally got to see Halo Infinite gameplay, and even though the end product might be a little more touched up and polished, I think you're still going to be able to see a lot of that core gameplay and everything from the Halo Infinite gameplay reveal back in July in the final finished product that we get sometime in 2021, which now I've seen rumors of it's going to be in November. And now, before we jump into the number 1 Halo event of the year, let's talk about some random exclusions I had that just didn't quite make the list. The first one of these is Halo CE. Halo CE was the first of the MCC titles to launch in 2020, as we got Halo Reach back in 2019. Halo CE released pretty well. It didn't have too many hitches, and it came out back in about March, and for the most part, people were pretty pleased with it, although it still had all the same issues and bugs that the Gearbox port has had for years. Unfortunately, Halo CE is just another one of those games that doesn't have a huge player base today in 2020, which is why I kind of left it off the list, and also the fact that we had Halo CE on PC back with Custom Edition and everything back in the early 2000s made the release on PC a little bit less impactful, as it is a game we'd been able to play before on PC. Another exclusion I had was ODST being released on PC. Not only did Halo 3 ODST release on PC, we also saw the inclusion of some of the ODST weapons added into Halo 3's sandbox, and at the same time they patched the hit registration for Halo 3, which was a huge improvement to the hit registration that had been plaguing the Master Chief Collection's version of Halo 3 for years. I know for many, ODST is one of their favorite Halo games in the franchise, but I just kept this one off the list just because it doesn't really have that big of a multiplayer community, because the only ODST multiplayer is Firefight, and it kind of seemed to just drop without as much hype as the other games. And lastly, for some of the random exclusions I threw on this list, it was just the brand deals that we saw throughout the year and all the stupid toy leaks. I just don't really care for all this stuff, which is why I didn't put it on the top 10, but we saw brand deals with Taco Bell and Butterfinger and Chips Ahoy and various other companies that I don't remember, along with tons of different toys that may or may not reveal features of Halo Infinite and whatnot. So I don't know if all that stuff will come to fruition in terms of the toy leaks, but the brand deals for me, they just aren't really doing it, since the game's not even going to be out until 2021, and that's kind of why I left all the brand deals and all the toy leaks off the list. And now that we have all that out of the way, the number 1 Halo event of 2020, I'm sure you guys all guessed it, was Halo Infinite being delayed. So around the time of mid-August, we got news that Halo Infinite was being delayed until 2021 so that they could polish up the game and everything, just because there had been so many criticisms of the gameplay reveal a month prior that they really felt that they needed to take some more time, polish up Halo Infinite, and make sure they were giving us the product that we want. While many were and still are in support of 343 taking their time and making sure that they get Halo Infinite right, it without a doubt is a huge bummer, as now we have to sit and wait another possibly year before we get a new Halo game. Halo Infinite's delay has had a huge impact not only on Halo fans who no longer had a new Halo game to play this year, but also all of the countless content creators and professional players that either make a living or make a substantial portion of their income off Halo. All of those people were definitely affected by the delay, along with obviously 343 themselves, who most definitely felt the impact of the delay. I've talked about it in previous videos. I personally think the delay was good if they felt that they needed the extra time to really make sure the product was there and it's ready for release. As we've seen with Cyberpunk recently, we don't want a game that is full of bugs and not ready for release. But regardless, we can't help but be a little bit bummed back in November when the new Xbox console came out and there was no Halo Infinite to play. And yeah, with that, that is the top 10 Halo moments of 2020. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I kind of tried to throw something a little bit fun together for the end of the year. As always, if you enjoyed the video, you know what to do. And if you want to catch me play games live, lately, sadly, I've been playing a lot of Valorant rather than Halo on my streams, but you can follow me over on Twitch, or you can also follow me over on Twitter where I tweet things and whatnot. And yeah, I will see you all next time.